You're listening to this week's episode of the Vacation Rental Business in Today's World podcast. You're about to start transforming your business and life with the information found here. We interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in the vacation short-term rental industry and supporting businesses. The information found here is a combination of brain science, transformational thinking, safety and loss prevention, and vacation short-term rental knowledge and experiences, all rolled into one to help you and your business to achieve levels you never thought possible. I am glad you are here, and now please welcome your host, Eric Thibodeau.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Safer VRS. I'm Eric Thibodeau, your host. I hope everyone is doing well this week. I'm going to be at the VRMA Spring Forum this week and looking forward to meeting some colleagues and new people that I haven't met before. Always interesting. I'm doing a topic, Ask the Expert, about guest safety. So I look forward to interacting with people there. And we'll be in Kansas City this week. And hope everyone that's there, I get opportunity to say hello, have a chat, and just catch up on some different things. So as we move on to in this podcast here, it's going to be the first of 5 on work that I've been reviewing and looking into for the last year. Maybe it won't be as smooth in my delivery as I'm continuing to look at applying this to the vacation rental industry. And it's about the principles of human performance. And certainly we're starting to see more about principles coming in. And this particular emphasis is all about human performance, principles of human performance as they apply in safety. And there's been a good bit of work by different individuals. Todd Conklin is the one that I'm going to be referring to here quite a bit, and looking forward to covering this topic. This is completely new for many of you, and it will probably be contraindicative of how you may think. And that's okay. It takes a while to look at some of these new principles. However, they're all based upon people, right? We in the hospitality, vacation rental, short-term rental industry, we are all about people, right? We are people ourselves. We are serving guests. We are serving owners. We are serving our workers, all to provide a business. And while we provide that business, we are working to do that in a safe manner. And I'll probably cover this as a different topic in the future. Somehow along the way through the years, businesses have come to believe that safety is something that's set on the side. It's not part of operations. It's not part of finance or accounting or how we run our businesses and maintenance. It's become something different. And what I mean by that is that it's something that's aside, right? We have safety meetings. We have different activities associated with safety. And I believe that's well and good. However, what we need to now take a look at is take safety that was set on the side and embed it into our business. And this business that we have is, in the vacation rental industry, property managers, owners, taking care of guests and owners. So let's take a look at that and see why have we done that. And it's really key into how we deal with principles of human performance and safety, really, because safety is integrated into our businesses. If you are managing or treating safety and loss prevention in your property management or vacation rental business, you need to step back and say, how can I integrate this into how I work? And as we start to talk now about these human principles, it's all about people. And people are part of our business. And people are integral to our success. And so we can't, and we probably haven't talked a lot about safety as it relates to our human performance. And so that's what the next few weeks are going to be about. They're part of something, it's called in the safety world different things. It could be called new safety, safety differently, safety 2.0, safety 3.0, and I'm just going to refer to it as safety. Every now and then, maybe I'll slip and call it new safety or something like that. But here we go. The first human principle is people make mistakes. And I believe at times that we don't always acknowledge that people make mistakes, but people do make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. And honestly, mistakes are part of how we learn. However, what I've found in particularly around safety incidents, we don't really look at why or how people fail. We don't learn. We just acknowledge that people fail, and then we begin to penalize those individuals. And here's our first big realization, particularly for us property owners or business management leaders, right? It's my philosophy is 100% responsible 100% of the time. And what that means in my business is that everything that happens in my business is, I'm responsible for. If someone made a difficult or bad decision, and we'll talk about what's good and bad, I think those are meanings that we assign to things. I'm responsible. I hired the person that hired the person, or I hired the person. I agreed to the policies or processes, right? However, at the end of the day, we're never going to be without error, without problems, okay? Because human beings are not infallible. We make mistakes. We make mistakes for different reasons. And we'll find that one of the future principles is about learning. And it's something that we don't do well, always or at the best in the safety industry. And I'd say it's even more true for safety in the vacation rental world. So as we move a little further and understand that, people are inherent to our business, that means we can and need to expect mistakes, right? When we have mistakes without significant consequences, this is the closest thing we have to leading indicator data. What that means is that safety world, we're always looking for different indicators of how we're doing in safety. And they tend to always be something like we have no fires, which is a great thing. But how do you know that I had no fires? Because what did I do? Or what did I not do? So what that statement said is that when we have mistakes that cause no significant incident or injury, then that's the closest thing to the best leading indicator, not a lagging indicator, to learn from what we're doing. Why are people making those particular mistakes, right? So people are our most important resource, and we need to begin to take a look at that and work that into recognize that people make mistakes, and how can we learn from that? So as we begin to take a look at some of these things, and when people make mistakes, the word blame tends to come up quite a bit. And it's really interesting to think that when there's an error, there's a problem, whether, we say, okay, well, that guest did this owner did that. Blame makes error less like errors and more like choices, right? And errors are never a choice, right? We never choose to make an error, to do something wrong intentionally. Now, there are some cases where that does happen occasionally. However, it's pretty rare, particularly in just about any business that I've seen. So when there are errors, we definitely want to not assign blame, and let's want to learn, because there are mistakes there. And back to, hey, we are the owners of this business. We're responsible for everything. And I think we'll start to see that when errors are occurring or people are making mistakes, we are somehow involved in whatever choices we make. And we didn't make choices that would be error prone. However, we made choices in our business. And now we need to tie that back part in, is that those tend to have people involved. Particularly in the vacation rental industry, it's heavy people. Everything we do is around people, and that we are responsible for that. So blame really does no good for the individual, because we didn't really identify what the problem was. And then the next person comes along and something similar happens, and we blame them. And we really need to stop and look and say, why are these mistakes happening? And how can I look at preventing it? And here's the first time I'll say this, and I'll probably say it multiple times in this podcast. is safety is not about accident prevention. It's about making sure that the presence of controls. So what are we able to put in place to protect owners and guests and our workers? So it's not about prevention of accidents, right? Because we can't prevent all accidents. I'll give you a quick story here. So there was a fire in a vacation rental. The guest was cooking and they fell asleep and a fire started. So here's the situation. We have a mistake made by a guest. What did we do to prevent that accident or incident? Well, we can't do anything, or we're really limited on our ability to prevent that incident or accident. However, we can employ controls to reduce the likelihood or severity of a serious incident or fatality, right? And that's really hard for some people to figure out or understand, is that while we want to prevent some things, we can't prevent everything. So the next logical step is to say, I'm going to employ controls in my property, within my team, within my business, that now are able to help in that particular incident begin to recover and fail to a safer state. So in this case, think about some controls we could have as the property management company and the owner. I could have a fire extinguisher that they could reach and quickly put it out. I have a smoke alarm that activates fairly quickly with loud enough decibels to awake the sleeping person and maybe others that are in the property, right? I have clear routes of egress out of the property. I have more than one. I don't have them blocked. I have the phone number to call emergency services. I have the address of the property so that when the guest is calling to report the fire, or someone's calling to report the fire, they know where they're at, right? They could have just arrived, and this begins to occur. So think about all these controls that I now have in place, right? I can't prevent, so I now begin to recover in a safe state, because people make mistakes, right? And that's really the crux of this first principle, is people will make mistakes. And then how are we going to provide controls? And that's really the big secret. I say it's a secret, but it's really the truth. I think for years we've begun to say, hey, I'm going to prevent all accidents. And I was on that bandwagon, everyone. I was there. I was working diligently to do it. And a few years ago, I came to the conclusion is that as a leader in a business, whether it's vacation rental or not, outside when I was working in oil and gas, there's always components that I can't prevent because people make mistakes. Now I need to understand why people make mistakes. And what makes it even more interesting in the vacation rental industry is that we don't always know or can influence guests who make mistakes because they don't work for us. We may not even know them. They come into the properties that we're managing or owning, and therefore we have to anticipate. We need to take a look and say, these guests will make mistakes. My owners will make mistakes. My team will make mistakes. What controls can I employ to now protect them so when something can't be prevented, I can fail to a safe state and that no one is injured or killed in that particular incident? And that's a different way of thinking, everyone. We need to move there, take some time, get your head around it, and begin to analyze that a little bit more. So let's look a little bit. So when people make errors, and particularly we'll look at our workers, and I think it's also true for guests, because it's inherent because of who we are. We're human, right? When people make errors, it's always about opportunity. When I read that for the first time, think about it, just speaks to the heart of safety, right? It talks to, well, I can do this better. I have a procedure, but I can do this better. And so I'm going to take this shortcut, or I've been pressed for time. My supervisor says I need to do this. Or even guests say, well, I don't really need to move the barbecue pit out from underneath the carport. I'm just going to do it here in the garage. I'm not going to use the fire pit. I'm going to start my own fire next to the house. I mean, all these are choices that people have made, and they're always about opportunity, right? And so as leaders, we need to understand that and say, why are these happening? All right. And here's the really simple part that I'll admit I didn't do, I'm doing now, is that I just ask my team. I don't have to have all the answers. I just go talk to them and say, hey, why did this happen? What's going on? You and I and everyone in the vacation rental industry, we will learn a tremendous amount from our team. They're on the ground every day. Yeah, maybe we used to be there. However, we're not there today. Maybe it's been a few years. Maybe we are there today. But people we work with have ideas and we need to learn from them because mistakes are normal and happen all the time. Every failure that we've had includes a mistake. Every success we've had includes mistakes, right? It's normal, right? It's normal to have these mistakes. And so we just need to begin to learn from them and put in controls. That's really the key part. So now that we acknowledge that mistakes are occurring, we need to begin to look more into that. And when something happens, why are we fixated on what could have happened as opposed to really looking at the process and the system that allowed the failure to occur? This is really important, particularly when we're looking at managing close calls and reporting information. We tend to look at these near misses or close calls as what could have happened as opposed to what actually happened. And here's another secret that we're going to cover more later is the context. When an incident occurs, there's three main parts. There's the incident taking place, there's the context around it, and then there's what happens next. And what's really important for us to understand is we always obviously can see what happened after the incident occurred, right? The mistake occurred and this injury occurred, or this incident occurred, this mistake happened, and nothing happened. But then let's step back and look at what is the context around that particular situation. Talk to the people, understand what was going on, what were the mistakes. And really, that's so important. Particularly, we're going to cover that as we get into incidents and reviewing things. So when we look at incidents, sometimes we say, well, I was really lucky, nothing happened, or I was really good and nothing happened. But really, when bad things occur in your organization, such as an accident, the consequences were minimal, a safeguard or safeguards were triggered, and the safeguard worked. That's one way of looking at it is, once again, we had controls. If we go back to the situation with the fire, if I would not have provided a fire extinguisher in that property, the guests heard the alarm activate or woke up, grabbed the fire extinguisher, put the fire out. But if I didn't have the control in place, now the situation, the mistake now escalates into a more dangerous situation. Now I can't extinguish the fire. I can't alarm and alert people. All the controls that are there, if something is triggered and the safeguards work, it reduces the likelihood of something more severe happening. The safeguard function exactly the way the control was designed to function. That's really important, right? That's why the controls are present in there. So when we do have incidents or near misses, let's move beyond the luck and let's look at the context of what's happening. Let's change the question from who failed to a much more valuable question of what worked and were we good or lucky. Changes the entire tenure of our conversation. So we tend to default of, because it's our human nature, right? This is what we've learned. And I'm introducing a new way, right, of learning here is that who blamed doesn't provide our business, your business, the strength, the powerful question to move forward as what worked in this situation. We know we're going to understand what didn't work, but what worked, right? And when we take a look at this, and you're interested in the ability of this process or system to contain the failure to fail safely and understand exactly the resiliency of this particular safeguard. You see that the response to this situation and these mistakes is more common than the actual mistake itself. Suddenly, this mistake becomes a trigger and not the cause. Not the cause. This mistake that happened, but really there's more to it. And this is a really powerful statement. suddenly the mistake or the error that took place becomes the trigger and not the cause. I'm looking at what worked. The error or mistake triggered your safety and reliability safeguards, and they went into action. And that's the new way, a new way of thinking. If we look at our old way, it's who made a mistake and asking for a promise not to err again. The cause doesn't live within the mistake. To ask someone to say, okay, well, why did you do that? And who made the mistake? And I don't want you to do it again. Don't do it again. I need you to promise. It's not possible. And if this is what we're doing today, we will continue to have incidents. Who failed is not as powerful as what failed or what worked. Safety is not the prevention of accidents, it's the presence of controls. And this is just super critical for us to move forward. So now that we've learned a little bit more about this, and then we begin to understand that our human errors and mistakes or the triggering to examine our systems, the identification that failure really becomes important, and it tells the story. There's a story of what's happening here in this response. And it's much more profitable and effective way to look at your organization's capacity to be able to create stability, safety, and production for a sustainable operation. What failed is more important because it's going to trigger this error, needs to trigger what failed or what worked, and we begin to understand. And here's really an important statement as I'm going to probably wrap up here because it really gets more complex as we go on, and I don't want to lose anybody here. But the problem with being wrong is that before you know you're wrong, it feels exactly like you're right. I'll say that again. The problem with being wrong is that before you know you're wrong, it feels exactly like being right. So here's really important part about, and it gets into some of my level 3 gold standard about, human behavior and inattention, is that the realizations that human error is normal is how difficult it is to identify even before the consequence, right? So at times we can't really see that what I'm about ready to do will create or trigger an incident. So it's really important for us to understand not the who, but the what that's occurring. So I understand the context of what's occurring. It all just gets back to, people make mistakes. And what we need to take a look at is we need to look at controls, right? The controls that we have in place. Human error is where you begin to identify your organizational systems are brittle. And when an error was made, when work was being conducted, the system was not prepared or ready for the outcome. We'll talk more about that later too. We always say, we've heard in the industry, we want to stop the job when it's unsafe. But if we think about the concept of, I want to start the job when it's good to go, that's more powerful. If I have everything in place, or is my system brittle? And taking a look at that. And so here where we are wrapping up this first particular principle, humans make mistakes. And how do we need to understand that principle? We need to let that sink in. We need to then understand that when incidents or near misses occur, mistakes are there. We need to own those mistakes as leaders and then not blame or say, hey, the worker made a bad choice. Let's focus on what worked and what controls were in place. And as we go into this is all like about level 1 that I talk about. I'm identifying hazards and I'm putting controls in place. And then controls are really what we're doing, taking a look at how healthy are the controls or the barriers that are in place. Because people will make mistakes. And what we're thinking about now, and I'd like to see how this feels, is that safety is not about accident prevention. It's about the presence of controls. Those controls can prevent, but more than likely in our situations, these controls will be put in place to reduce the likelihood of a serious incident or fatality. Because we need to begin to wrap our minds around that the prevention of all accidents is not attainable. And I've truly learned that here in the vacation rental industry, because now we just don't have workers. We have guests and we have owners that they don't work under our umbrella of influence. We have some influence on guests and owners. However, once they're in the property and what they're doing what they're doing. And so we need to anticipate and say, and when I say anticipate, that means including our team, our workers, everyone on the front line. What are the controls I need to put in place to keep the guests safe? And certainly Safer VRs can support and help in that endeavor. So I'll leave it there. I'd like everyone to go out, have a great day, create a safe day. Everything we do is about what we create. And I'd like you to create a safe day. Go out, have a great day. And next week, we're going to talk about the second principle of human performance. I look forward to hearing how that's setting in your life, in your business, and, how does it make you feel? And if you say, it doesn't make me feel great, that's okay. Things don't change overnight, and it's fine. We'll settle into it, work through it, and keep tackling it, because people will make mistakes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Safer VR's podcast with Eric Thibodeau. If you enjoy this, I would love you to join my Facebook group, The Safer Vacation Rentals, for more of the same. You can also join our email list at www.safervrs.com.